Welcome, everybody, to day 9 of LOVEStream. Thank you for being here. We are so excited. I have the amazing Nancy Jean here, who's going to tell you about some really fun things that she has been doing. And if you're not familiar with Nancy Jean, you should check her out. I put her YouTube channel link pinned at the top so you can check out her channel. She's got some really cool things for abundance that you might want to look at now as things are getting a little crazy. But let me tell you a little bit about Nancy Jean before we dive in deeper. She is a psychic, intuitive tarot reader, and the wise woman behind Nancy Jean's Garden. She is a true force of nature. Her work is like a sacred weaving of tarot crystals and energy grids, all designed to awaken your inner knowing, guiding you to your soul's truth and the crystalline being that you're evolving into. Did you know that? But there's more. Nancy taps into the forgotten knowledge of Earth, ancient ley lines, the energetic veins of the planet, to ground your spirituality into practical applications for abundance and success. If you felt a calling to be part of something vast, ancient, and deeply divine, this is the show for you. Welcome, Nancy Jean. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for those kind words.
You are welcome.
I feel as ancient as my rocks most days right now, but it's okay.
You are timeless.
Yes. Well, the rocks are timeless, and they remind us that we're timeless, and they have personalities and share information and share energy. And that we're going to look at how to build a grid today so you can tie yourself to some rocks.
That is awesome. And I was telling Nancy before we started, Metatron kept today's message at about half the length that he's been doing because he wanted to give her extra space for her presentation. So how cool is that?
It's cool.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what you've been up to for those who may not be familiar with you.
I was a psychic from the time I was quite young, and I'm not going to give you the horror stories. Actually, my stories weren't horror stories. I just kind of was such a self-directed human in human form that I didn't care what they said. You know, people would get squashed and told not to say this. My mother was never crazy about it. But then she'd secretly go to fortune tellers. So, you know, what can I say? But I've been dealing with and dabbling around in this stuff since the real first time that I was like out publicly. I knew I could see things, and I could see things around people and stuff. But a friend had a tarot deck at a slumber party, and we started reading it. When the other girls would read it, it wouldn't make sense. But when I read the cards, they made sense. And so I kind of found that. And then I studied all the adjacent things around it. But there wasn't much, really. There wasn't nothing like the kind of literature there is now. As I grew up and became an adult, even though I would walk away from the cards, my first husband gave me a deck for Christmas, our first Christmas together. And then I ended up running a bunch of volunteers, and we would try to keep them from not, it was at Channel 13, it was a public broadcasting station. And these were the back in the days when the people were really on the phones, when you'd call and you'd pledge your money and stuff. Well, I had to do something to keep them busy during the show till the pledge break, so they didn't drink too much wine. And so I'd read cards, and they just kept following me around my whole life. And I eventually took a course in astrology because I met a really cool astrologer here in Dallas. And then it just kind of grew. And then I have a master's in business and accounting and computer science. I worked for a major corporation, and I read cards, and I had little kids and stuff. And I eventually taught tarot. And when I finally got to the point that I got diverted into working political campaigns, and I did that for a little over 10 years. And then when I quit that, because my knees literally gave out, I had to get them replaced. This wine bar, which was always my sort of dream job, was to read cards in a wine bar, you know. And because it was a really cool wine, great neighborhood, just beautiful people. The week before I was going to get my knees replaced, the owner said, and when your knees are done, you're going to come read here every Tuesday night. And I said, well, I don't even know if I'll be able to read, because there was at the time some discussion if you cut off parts of your body that you disturbed your energy. It didn't work that way. My knees were just fine. I could read. And Rob was right. So I started reading there. And then I ended up getting a gig off that, working for a vintage store. And that's what I was doing up until COVID hit. And I just kept expanding my knowledge and what I did. And during that time, I expanded beyond the cards into working with other mediums. And we're going to talk about one of those today. I'm going to show you the first grid I ever built, which I built in 2019. And I saw it came up on my Facebook page, a picture from the past. And there it was. And I still have it. And I'll explain all that when we get to that. But that led to grids, and then grids led to gardens. And I have another modality called a garden, which I was just told during COVID, you have to build this. And so I built it, created it, worked with an artist named Alma, who did the artwork. I had all the ideas. I just said, I need it to look like this. It was kind of like AI before AI. I said, do this, Alma, and she'd do it. And we created the garden, and we built them out, and I sold the last one I had left about 3 months ago. And I promised those people I'm going to have a class on how to use them. But the reason I created the garden was I wanted a non-polarity. After all the polarity we've been in, I wanted a non-polarizing modality, and they gave it to me. And one of the things my garden will not do, will not read politics. Made Sheila furious. Sheila Celtic Tarot. She got a garden early on, and we did a show together, and she said, oh, let's try to roll. Just a couple questions. And every time we rolled it, stones would roll off the board, which they don't do. And, mostly the stone that rolled off was the mental stone. This is mindless. You're not doing it. Finally, she had to say, you're right. It only deals with who you are and what your own spiritual matters are. My garden is a place. I didn't want to do a YouTube channel. I'm one of those. And one night I woke up, walked into where my office is now, where I'm speaking to you from. And there was a big wall, a big brick wall across. And I went, that wasn't there when I went to bed. And then a voice said, paint the wall. And I looked down, and there was a big bucket of paint and like a wallpapering type brush. And I swished it across the bricks, and they dissolved. And beyond it was this whole garden. And I said, what the hell kind of paint is that? I said, what is this place? And they said, it's the garden you're going to create where people can come plant their own seeds and grow in their own way. And that's the goal of when she says it, that's everything I'm pushed to do, is to help you learn how to plant your seeds, plant your crystals, plant your energy so that you can grow forward. That's it.
Beautiful. Yeah. And people right now need that connection to Gaia.
This is now. Yeah. Before, when I was kind of spinning my wheels and I was like, oh, well, they could do it this way. They could do it. But right now, I do one political show a week on Sunday mornings. But my whole attitude, even when I left politics, it was, y'all have to take over your own life. If you're waiting for, I remember the frustration of waiting for Bob Mueller's report was going to do it. Then it was going to be Jack Smith. And I kept saying, these guys aren't Santa. Our energy has to say this is changing. It can't be anybody else's. So.
Yeah, Metatron delivered a message about that a while back. Nobody's coming to save you. You've got to save yourself.
Yeah, and for all those people, but I feel so bad for this person. Don't worry about that person until you quit feeling bad inside yourself. And I've taken some heat because during this time since November, I've watched a lot of escapism, a lot of television, but I finally figured out my guides were sending me to the right place. So I've seen a lot of history, and I'm beginning to understand how this history aligns with other times in history that were absolutely terrible. And the people made it through. And the people who helped the most were the ones who helped everyone around them the most. So get your own oxygen mask on so you can move forward and then start to help others. And like, I was so excited to see the walking and the marching and the people standing up. That's really what we need.
Yeah, Monday we had Eleanor Roosevelt show up as our special guest. And
Oh,
she gave
good.
us a lecture about fascism,
Oh,
which was
Eleanor,
amazing.
if you've ever read about Eleanor Roosevelt, that woman absolutely picked it up and said, no, we're going here. You know, a lot of what Franklin did was because Eleanor was talking to him saying, we're going in this direction.
It was amazing. And she chose to come on the day that we were talking about the goddesses with Susan.
Oh, yeah.
That was just the synchronicities is blowing me away all week long.
So that's where we are.
Yes.
That's where I am. And I'm going to show you I'm going to show you the original grid I built. I'm going to explain the logic about it. And then I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to quick set up. So, and it doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be shiny. And it doesn't have to look like it was built on a shiny hill. I've had people build grids out of just agate rocks that they found.
So, yeah, well, it's all energy and intention. We know that. So,
right. And size with crystals doesn't matter. So someone can have the world's most giant geode and tell you how wonderful it is, and yet it's not it. It's not how it works. So,
yeah. Well, let me go ahead and share Metatron's message for today, and then we will move on into your presentation. How about that?
Okay, great.
All right. So get ready. Day 9. Can it really be so? The time has flown by. Is it the same for you? We hope you have enjoyed the experience thus far. Psst, we still have more surprises up our sleeves. Stay tuned and prepare.
Mm-hmm.
So on day 9, what should we reflect upon? We have covered many topics. How about what do you need to know that you don't know today? That would be a fine topic.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to know is that despite appearances, there are more things right with your world than not. That is due largely in part to the diligence of the faithful lightworker warriors who continue holding the line for democracy, planting the seeds for Earthtopia, leading the way for those who are unsure. Every journey has its share of challenges, and this one is no exception. In fact, this one, for many of you, has had more than the normal number of challenges because this is not a normal lifetime. This one is coloring outside the lines, calling you to step up to a higher level of responsibility, to work diligently at the side of your fellow lightworkers, as together you manifest the prophecy of Earthtopia. Yes, I did say manifest. Yes, I did say together. It's a collaborative effort. Wherever you are on your journey is perfectly fine. Remember, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. The final destination is exiting your skin suit, returning to spirit form. From there, you'll still be able to contribute as the other side does collaborate, but you want to be diligent about fulfilling as much of your pre-birth plan as possible, lest you be bitterly disappointed when you get to the other side. You need to know that whatever you have to do to live your purpose is worth the effort. Do it for yourself. Do it for those whom you serve. Everything is connected. Efforts that you make today will ripple far into the future, creating synchronicities and possibilities that you cannot even imagine at this moment. The intricately woven universe pulls the threads and brings the appropriate parts together at the appropriate time. That includes your contributions, so you need not worry about the when and how. That will be taken care of in divine timing. Your team will see to it. You may not even be aware when your ripples flow through the lives of others. Universe is like a giant clock with many components, all working in perfect harmony and symmetry, serving its function. It's not something you need to concern yourself with because it just is. Creator set it up to run on autopilot. Of course, there is a team that oversees the activities in order to carry out any repairs that are necessary. There's the potential for everything to hit a snag now and then. There are a great many other things you don't know, but it's not necessary to know everything. Should the time arrive when you need to know, we will clue you in. You need have no worries on that account. You also need to know that Gaia is faring better than you might think. She has been diligently healing, reinforcing, expanding her own frequency to prepare for the great shift. She anticipates that time, which by all accounts ought to be easier for her, as she will receive more consideration and care, more who wish to minister and heal her. Still others who wish to put structures in place to perpetually protect her. All of this is positive in the eyes of Creator and welcomed by Gaia. She still has lots of life left in her, life and vitality. That does not mean that you should stop having concern and taking care. It just means that she has her own inherent power to heal and revitalize. She is diligently working towards that goal. We are pleased to share the stage with Nancy Jean today. She brings a multi-purpose toolbox with deep insights and wisdom to share. From her marvelous garden, she brings the power of the crystals and the wisdom gleaned from studies and experience that she graciously shares. Be sure to let her know how much you appreciate her efforts on your behalf, for there are many. She quietly works behind the scenes, shifting energy, helping things to stay in alignment without acclaim. Much appreciation and love is due her. You would do well to spend some time in her famous garden, soaking up the energy and the wisdom that can be found there, along with discovering things about yourself you had not yet understood. She is the real deal. You can have faith and trust in her. You also need to know that you are further along in your spiritual journey than you might imagine. Give yourself credit. Bask in appreciation for how far you've come with your team. Look for the next milestone that you wish to find. You should know that every day is a glorious day, whether the sun shines warmly upon you or whether frigid winds blow, causing your teeth to chatter. Those are minor physical considerations. We'd like to validate for you that your progress has been noted, and we encourage you to seek ways where you might step up and serve in a higher capacity. And hey, maybe that's speaking. Should you feel ready, many hands make short works. Presently, there are not enough hands, lightworker hands. We should clarify to reach the goal, more are needed. And then I said to Metatron, oh, I get it. You are keeping this deliberately short because Nancy Jean has so much to share. And he's like, yeah, we deeply appreciate you and we will see you tomorrow. All right.
Thank you, Metatron.
Yes.
He's a tall dude.
I have heard that. Yeah. He doesn't show up as 300 feet tall for me.
No, he shows up like a tall tree for me. But
yeah, a tree. Wow.
And you've got Hogarth, my tree, behind you in graphic form. Hogarth is a year and a half, 2 years ago. I woke up one night and there was a dragon in my bedroom, and he said, "I've come to get you." And I've learned to not say, "Oh no, go away." No, I've got a dragon. Yay. So I got on Hogarth's back. I got on his name was Cecil. I got on his back, and it was fascinating because we flew around the world. And we were flying over Paris and I could see the Eiffel Tower. We were flying over London and I could see Big Ben. You know, there's things I knew in these cities that were there. And then all of a sudden we got to some part in the Atlantic and there's a big hole in it. And he said, "We're going down, hang on." And I'm looking at this hole get closer and closer and we're just dive bombing into this hole. And Hogarth took me to the level of energetic reality that the elementals live in. And he stopped in this glade, and he said, "Get off, they're coming for you." And so I'm like, "You're not going anywhere because I don't think I find my way out that hole." And he said, "No." He said, "I'll be here." And out came, they created a physical form so I could recognize them, but they're pure energy. They're fairies and pixies and brownies and, just it was like being in the Lord of the Rings, And I looked at them and they said, "Oh, you're here for the party." And they took me into the woods, and in the center of the woods was this big arena where they were having a party. And they acted like, "Oh yeah, you come here every Saturday night." And I'm kind of sitting there going, "What?" And I said, "Okay, fine." And I listened to them talk, and I said, "Why am I here? Why did you bring me?" And they said, "Because you do rituals." I do a ritual called 9 Candles. And they said, "You do rituals, you understand the importance of there being meaning in time and understanding." And I said, "Okay." I never knew lighting 9 candles was going to get me this, so I enjoyed it. And there was unicorns there was mermaid type, there was nymph type creatures in the stream that was by it. Anyway, at the end they said, "Okay, now you know we're here, you know what to do." And I'm like, "No, I don't know what to do." And they said, "You're going to present us to the world because we're coming back." And so I went, "Okay." And I walked out to the edge of the woods, and Cecil was there. By the way, dragons are not scaly. They're actually very soft, kind of birdish sort of fur. I got back up on Cecil, and I said, "You're taking me home." And the next thing I knew, I was in bed. And I got up and I wrote out what I'd seen, but I knew it wasn't a dream. It's like, when it's not a dream. And so then my ego got in the way and my humanity got in the way. And I went like, I'm not going to get on YouTube and talk about the elementals. I'm not going to say I got dragged off by a dragon in the middle of the night and all this. I mean, as much strange stuff as I know and say and have seen, that one was a bridge too far. So I got in my car 2 days later, and I hear it tap, tap, tap on my driver's side window, and there's a giant solid gold dragonfly. And it's putting its wings up against the car window. And I'm going, hello? And what I'm hearing is, you got to talk about us because we're coming. And there are others who are studying and working with elementals, but we feel you understand us and you got to work with us. And so I was like, oh. And I was driving, and the dragonfly was right ahead of my car windshield. Finally, I said, "Okay," out loud. I said, "Okay, guys, I'm going to do it. I'll do a show tomorrow. And I'm sure I'll have a lot more confidence in what I saw by tomorrow than I have right now, but we'll do it." And the dragonfly just disappeared. And in front of me was this gorgeous tree that's all covered with burls. And I had just learned about finding ley line trees, and it ends up, there's a ley line, a great big one, at the end of my driveway that cuts across parkland. And I kept feeling, I know there's a ley line here. Where is it? And later that week, I woke up and was out walking in this little green stretch. And there was literally a yellow brick road. The grass had turned completely yellow, going one way and going another, going right under that tree. No other trees. And I said, "Oh, that's my ley line tree." Well, then I was talking to another reader, and I said, "I don't know that I can do this." And she said, "Well, I think you have to." And I said, "Well, I know you do because you're not the one who has to do it." And she said, No. A friend of mine who doesn't deal in the world of woo at all, doesn't do anything with this, she sent me 2 paintings, and I want to send them to you. And one was a painting of my dragon, Cecil. And the other was a painting of the portal. Look exactly like the portal I went down into. And she said, "This woman painted this 3 weeks ago. You had this experience within the last 2 weeks." She said, "You got to talk about it. It's real." So thank you for including Hogarth in our set, because Hogarth likes that. I went out and saw him a year ago when we were coming up to the spring equinox. And I said, "Hogarth, you're not blooming yet." And he said, "Oh, come back tomorrow." And trees in Texas don't bloom particularly quickly because water situation. Yeah. And I walked out the next day and he was covered with little green leaves and things all over him. And I said, "You've changed." And he said, "Change is coming." And I said, "Yeah, but you really changed." And I said, "You changed so quickly." He said, "Oh, this is nothing compared to what's coming." And boy, was he ever right. So now how can you build something to ground yourself? To get kind of, it's just a way to deal contemplatively with what's going on. So if you've never seen a grid, I'm going to cut to my other camera. And this is my grid. This is a grid I built in 2019. And I had just started studying crystals. And I knew just enough to be dangerous when it came to dealing with crystals. So, and there's a couple things you have to understand when you're talking about crystals. Crystals are like we have molecules we're made up of. That's why they're called crystals. They have crystals that they're made up of. And this is when you're thinking about building a crystal grid. I'm going to I'm not going to take it. I'm going to take it apart backwards. Okay. Normally when I start working with a crystal grid, I have to find out what I want in the center. And in this case, I use selenite because it draws all kinds of light in and it reflects all kinds of light out. The original grid I built had a black pyramid in the middle. And the pyramid was to ground the energy in. And most grids that I build start with one point in the center. And then this grid was being built to help my children and a bunch of friends of mine. The letter that I wrote underneath, and I said, it's to inspire and induce new foundations, new ways of working, new ways of living, and finding new foundations for ourselves. In numerology, 1 is the beginning, and 4 is building a base. So I immediately put these are 4 little lepidolites, and they bring in a lot of wisdom. That's the 4 lepidolites. And I put them around the center stone. Then I said, okay, what else do I want to do? And so you're going to see a lot of these stones are in 4s. These are 4 pyrites. Pyrites are fool's gold. They kind of glitter. They used to fool everybody because it's iron in it. You'll find a lot of iron where there's gold, and these are iron pyrites. These pyrites are to draw in wealth. The crystalline energy of the stones pulls in wealth. That's symbology of pyrite. Then I have 3 green adventurines, and I have 1 rhodochrosite. The green adventurines bring in a happy, joyous communication energy, and the rhodochrosite softens your heart. And so I put those in. So then we've got that ring. And I think I can remember where to put all this back together, I hope. Then I wanted, you should be here. I wanted to build a ring to draw this energy in. So in this ring, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 kyanites. Kyanites are a connecting stone. They really do, and they come in a lot of different colors. And a lot of the ways that colors work is they relate to chakras. So this has to do with communication. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8. And these are a rough citrine. It's a yellowish stone. It's the same It is exactly the same chemical formula as amethyst, but citrine gets hotter in the mountain. But otherwise, it's molecularly the same. But citrine in the Middle Ages was called the merchant stone, and you would never find a merchant anywhere in the Middle Ages that didn't have a chunk of citrine in their store, because they believe it brought prosperity, good things, wonderful stuff coming towards you. And then I had the cardinals points, the north, south, east, and west. And this is a little this is bubbled up lava. It just kind of looks like a little bitty bubble thing when you look at it. And this is carnelian, which goes for the heart. And this is tiger's eye, which goes for luck. And this one's just a lovely grounding stone. And those four mark north, south, east, and west on my grid. And then I put some things on the outside over the years. I've had this since 2019. So I have this beautiful little green jade heart, which I keep because it reminds me to have that kind of green softness in my heart. This is the same as this, but it's got more green in it. It's in that family of rhodochrosite. I think it's, I should have looked, I thought I would remember it. It's chrysocolla. I think it's chrysocolla that's tumbled. And then I have a piece of raw volcanic. It's obsidian, but it's a very dull obsidian. And I just put those in there over time. So what do I do with all this? So I think I'm going to put, when I fire it up this time, I'm going to start with the pyramid. Pyramids are interesting energetic forms in crystalline mythology. When I have, I'm building a Merkaba for someone in a web form, in a grid form, and in the pyramid pulls the energy in, and it also lets it go out. So you got to think about that when you're looking at this. I got this. No, they were this marks.
And when you say it goes out, is that like leaking going out, or just that it's projecting energy?
It can move your energy, your own energy out. So if you're energetically you need to do something out in the world, you have the power to do it.
Okay.
Okay. So then so now you built a grid, and the first time I built the grid on that day in March 2019, and I'd written up my list of people, and it was quite an extensive list. And this was all pre-COVID. I had no idea that was coming our way. And it was to bring in fun and abundance, fun things that we maybe wouldn't buy for ourselves. Okay. And, something that would just show up on the doorstep and you go, wow, that was something I didn't know I had. And so and what I did is I started with the center stone. This is a wand. This is a very elaborate wand. It's a rutilated quartz wand. You could use your finger. You could use any other crystal you wanted to use. But I always tell people because I send wands with every grid I build, but people never find them again. And so I always use your finger. So you start here and you go, I just think in terms of I'm connecting all the energy, all this crystalline energy together. And then I go out to the next row out and I go to that set of stones. And then I'm going to go out and do my pyrites. And then I'm going to go out into the outer row and I'm going to start with the north, south, east, west. And then I'm going to go and touch all of the citrines that I have on here. Now, whether you touch the outer stones, I probably should have taken them out there because they're going to confuse you. You don't have to touch them, but you do need to touch your kyanite and ask the kyanite to complete the circle. Now, you don't necessarily need a kyanite. There may not be a kyanite in there, but that's what's going to happen. So then you go over around and you start swirling around.
So you're doing clockwise. Is that purposeful?
Do what makes most sense to you. That makes most sense to me. Like I said, guys, I didn't read a book about this. I just did it.
But you're doing it intuitively, and sometimes there's a reason.
Right. And then put your hand over the center, and it's fired up. You'll feel it's warm. And don't ask me why that happens. And I had one lady that she bought a grid for me, and she said, "I've waved my wand, I've done everything, and it never gets warm." But because I created the grid, I was sitting in Dallas and she was in New Jersey, and I kept saying, "But I feel warmth." Oh yeah, it's really warming up now. I really feel warmth. And I was like, I don't know what I can say. And so finally, we decided maybe she tried to fire it up during a retrograde. I don't believe that makes a bit of difference. Hi, Gigi. Anyway, so I went over it all with her. And finally I said, "Did you write a list of intentions with this?" And she said, "Well, yeah." And I said, "Have any of them worked? And has any of it shown up?" And so she got her intentions list, and the first 5 had already happened. And I said, "Then I don't know why your grid's not hot, or why you're not feeling it, but it's working." So that's a very, and you notice none of those stones obviously are attached. When I build grids now, I send them to you with your stones attached. And this is a grid for the world. This came up a couple of years ago. I was reading with Tim Walter, who does earth energies in England. And he said, "Why don't you build a grid for the world?" And I went, "That's not pretentious. I'm going to build a grid for the world." Sure. So then Dr. Gale and Jeffrey wouldn't leave me alone. They said, "You have to build a grid for the world." So I built this grid. It's based on the Merkaba and the heart. And the cards I use now when I read for people, when I put them together, comes from this deck. Activations, Sacred Geometry Activation Oracle. And I had to find a way to do it when I wasn't in touch directly with people. So anyway, this is fluorite, which is one of my favorite stones. And these are green moss, and this is goldstone and carnelian. And these are blue adventurines that are not highly polished, but they're blue adventurines. And this is honey calcite. And these are mother of pearl with blue lace agate on it. And then all around the edge, this is quartz, this is quartz, this is quartz, and this is quartz. And all the rest of it is fluorites. And fluorites are fascinating stones. They form a natural octahedron, which is when you say the phrase "as above, so below," it works like that. It's if you think "as above, so below," to the left of me, to the right of me, in front and in back, you've built an octahedron around yourself. So, and these are little bitty octahedrons. And we fired it up on New Year's 2 years ago. And then this last New Year's, somebody said, "Are you going to bring the world grid out again?" See, what was supposed to happen is Danny Shea was supposed to take this and sneak it into the UN and hang it on the wall.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
But he won't. He said no. He said, "I'm in California and I don't know much about the UN and I'm not going there." So, but what happened was when I looked at it this New Year's, this stone is breaking apart. And if you can't see it, but if you look in the sides, the stone's actually fissuring on itself. So we're just sort of holding on till it decides what it's going to do.
If you were to take a really good photo of that and hang it somewhere meaningful in your home, do you think there would be power there?
Yeah. It's an image. I think, though, that might be more powerful for someone. And I have
thinking
that.
if you could get a photo smuggled into the UN, that might help.
Well, I think I'm going to leave the UN. I think the UN has enough problems. But
yeah,
you can go and buy little bags of stones at a rock shop. Like for $5, you can get a whole box of a bag of Criscola. This one is $2, and it's just agates. Now, what do you do with it? Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to put out, because it's pretty, I'm going to put a green calcite out and make that my center stone. And then I'm going to look at these stones. And I kind of like them. They have some interesting shapes. And say I just said, okay, I just want to do a stone to settle me down for the next week. Well, I pick this, which has already been made into a cube. You can find the weirdest stuff in these little bags of rocks. And then
looks like a sugar cube.
It does look like a sugar cube. And then I'd find something this color because it reminds me of citrine, so that's for good fortune. And then I'd find blue, and that almost looks like Amazonite. So I'm going to say it's, and it may be Amazonite, because what these bags are made up of is when they sweep the floor of a place where they've been sorting crystals. And I'm going to make my own little crystal grid because I want grounding this week. I want good fortune to come this week, and I want to protect my heart. And I want it to happen in green calcite, which is a wonderful stone for activating positive energy. That's a grid.
Barbara has a question for you.
Sure.
When do you use a crystal wand to fire up the grid?
When you're starting it up the first time. Barbara's the lady I told you about that I told her to watch because you use it when you're firing up the grid. You just start touching the stones. Now, like I said, you don't have to have a lot of elaborate equipment. You don't have to have all this crazy stuff. I literally have built grids out of, and these stones are dyed. This is dyed a dark blue, and this is dyed yellow, and this is my homage to the Ukrainian flag that's on my desk every day when I come in. I'm reminded. You know, you pull these and figure out, and you'd hold each stone and say, "What are you saying to me?" Some of these conglomerate stones are like like creek stones and stuff. They have some wonderful stuff. This happens to be a polished stone. And what happened was the lady called me up and she said, "I'm moving and I have a giant," and she had a giant thing of stones and crystals all mixed up together, which is something I don't advise people doing, but you can. I mean, I can tell you what to do. I'm going to come back to me. But you can, and so I went and got it, and I'm still using stones that I pulled out of that giant. I mean, it was like a giant. It like took me and my youngest to carry it out of her house. So you can acquire stones all kinds of ways. They don't have to be mystical and wonderful. I would suggest before you bring a crystal into your home that you cleanse it. Every bag I buy at the crystal store, I spray down with this is a Palo Santo spray. You can find it online. You can find it at the wizard shop. You can find it, I don't know where you live and how much access you have to. And I cleanse all the stones. And when I finish building a grid, like before I sent Barbara's off to her, I sprayed it all down with stuff to negate. So when she got it, it's her grid. It's her energy that's going to go in there, and it's up to her to do it. Now, I found out when people call me with questions about their grids, I tend to still be kind of attached to them.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, mama.
And there's about 300 of them. If you go to my website, www.crystaldirectionswithan.com, there's a whole gallery where you can look at crystal grids, and there's a whole sideshow of crystal grids.
Yeah, I'm just going to copy it. I put it in there earlier in comments, but I'm going to add it again at the bottom. So when you take the grid and you attach the stones,
right,
does that change it in any way? That there is attached versus loose?
No, I worried about that because actually it's kind of better, because when I was first building grids in 2019, before COVID, everybody I built them for, they were people I read, and I wasn't using these cards yet because I was talking to them personally, and I was figuring out their numbers and kind of what they needed to work with. And then I designed something for them. They'd meet with me. I'd have the crystals there. I'd have a form. I'd lay it all out for them, explain them how they're supposed to be. I'd take a picture, send that to their cell phone, bundle the crystals back up in a bag, and hand them the grid and say, go, have a good time. And like one woman, I did it for her asthma, and she said, it's working so well. And I saw her all the time because she worked in the store. She said, it's working so well. And then finally came a week and she said, I don't know if the allergy season's worse, but my grid just doesn't seem to be working. And I said, is it still together? And she said, oh, I put it way up high where the cats couldn't get at it. Well, the cats had gotten at it. And it was boom, boom, boom all over. So as soon as she still had her picture, so she put it back together, and then she found apparently a closet with a door. Like I said, it doesn't kind of matter where you put it as long as you've attached your energy to it. It's kind of like a little energy battery that's going behind you all the time, helping you. I had another friend who, she said, oh, I set up, it's in the middle of my dining room table. I said, what the hell's going to happen when you have people over for dinner? And she said, oh, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then she came in to see me. She was somebody I read at the wine bar all the time. She said, man, the last month, I've been slogging through hell. Nothing seems to be working. It was going along so well. And I said, well, refire up your grid. Look at your grid and figure it out. He said, oh, my grid. And I said, your grid what? And she had taken it down to have a dinner party and shoved it in a cabinet and had put it back up. So she said as soon as she did that, it started moving. I mean, it's not going to solve all your problems. I mean, we built a grid for the world and the center stone's falling apart. What can I say? But it is going to give you a boost of energy. It's give you a way to refocus your energy differently and to not be so locked into I've always had this pattern and it's here. You can feel the changes. When you get a grid, if you get a grid, on the back of the grid is every crystal and why it's there.
That's awesome.
So you can, because grids and crystals have different definitions for different things, and they also balance each other differently. You have Amazonite, aquamarine, and apatite. Okay. Amazonite is the culmination of protection. Apatite is the period of time it pulls your energy through towards protection. And aquamarine is kind of like water. It's where your intentions are in that watery state. There's one grid I've built that has you're going through 3 different changes in the way the grid lays out. And I found that out when I was laying those stones out. They said, oh, we all play together. This is how it works. So,
have you ever built an Archangel grid? Because that just came to me really big. Whoa. That would be amazing.
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd have to really sit down. I don't do much work. The archangels and I kind of have a deal. I don't mess with them and they don't mess with me. But yeah, you could. I mean, there'd be no reason. Well, I say that, but it's not altogether true. I can't find it because it's not here on my desk. My archangel is Haniel. She's my one, and I found the sigil for her, which is a feather. It's a white feather, and I found a stone person in England, and it's a man-made stone. Well, it's a woman-made stone actually. In this case. And let me see if I'm gonna turn something off. See if I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit too.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna help, but she I sent her that's the sigil I wanted, and she sent me the most beautiful stone where she had carved in, anyways, permanently on the stone. And that's the only archangel stone I've ever made.
I'm just thinking, because your world grid, that's so perfect for where we're at right now, and it aligns so beautifully with what we're doing here in LoveStream. What if you had an archangel grid and you got those two working together? That could be massive.
You know more about the archangels than I do. You talk to the tall guy. Yeah, we can explore that as a possibility. And I really okay. What's next for me? Otherwise, I really believe in numerology as far as understanding the numbers to understanding the patterns. I teach tarot. I'm starting a new class on the 16th of June. You can go to my website and find out how to get in. There's still a couple spaces left. And if we grow, we're going to grow into a Saturday. But I teach with Jeffrey Ripecolor. And our whole first class is nothing but numbers. So when you saw me talking about 4 is how you build a base, 2 is how you create communication. 3 is also a number of communication. But an 8 is prosperity, and I used to always say it's the money card. It's a money number, but we teach you all of the numerology. And when you understand that numerology and you get it with the tarot, then you can apply it to something like a grid or like something else. And also we really teach you how to read tarot. You'll be able to read tarot by the end of the class. I've had people who said, I've had this deck since I was in college and I never knew what to do with it. We'll show you what to do with it. But it's an interesting concept. Could we work it with an archangel? I hadn't really thought about doing that. The other thing I've got going is starting on the 24th of April, I am doing the 9 candles. I'm doing the 9 candles from the 24th of April until May 2nd. And I did not want to do another 9 candles because I have to get 9 readers together. You know this, they're a little like herding cats. Yes. But I'm not brave. I don't do mine live anymore. We pre-tape, but we do them as premieres. And this time I've done 9 candles. We start out as 9 red candles, which is a Chinese feng shui ceremony for bringing in prosperity and energy into your life. I've done 9 green candles, 9 blue candles, 9 yellow candles. I've done a rainbow of candles, and I've done all different sorts of ways. And each of them had their own flair and they had their own reason for being there. But they're just exhausting. And because you not only have to tape everything, get it all up, do it all, then you have to be there for 9 nights in a row. And not that you're there, you're in a premiere. I can do it on my phone sitting in my chair, but I like to be there and answer people's questions.
Sure.
So this time, when I heard you're doing 9 candles, and I mean, the dates were just on the piece of paper. This is the date you're doing it. And so I went, what's it going to be about? And they said, no, you have to wait. So I had to wait until after the eclipse. And that's kind of cutting it close because I have to invite people and kind of tell them what they're getting into. And what it told me, what it is what every person who comes and chooses to participate in the 9 candles, the challenge to you is, what are you lighting in yourself? And just fun things. And it's not a color, and it's not a specific kind of shape. It's not votive candles. So I went, okay, how am I going to do this? So unfortunately, Saturday morning before I had breakfast, I decided to go look for unique candle shapes to burn this. So there's like 9 candles, all look a whole lot like food, like a wedge of cheese and an apple. The apple actually has Lilith wrapped around it. But anyway, we're going to do it for 9 days. I do a meditation. I have a different reader. Come on, reader. It's kind of like what you're doing here. They talk about what they're doing, and people get a flavor for what they do. And it's just another ceremony. It's like the elementals told me. The elementals are here, guys. They're here big time. They are all over the world. And people are telling me that one lady said, I've never walked down my street and seen so many fairy gardens in people's garden beds, because everybody's all of a sudden feeling, I got to build this for these critters. They're here. The elementals can be very useful to you. That I find the elementals are very grounding. They're not an ethereal energy like angels or some of the other things are. They're very grounded energies, so that can make it easier to work with sometimes. At least makes it easier for me, because I'm from the earth, by the earth, and for the earth. And anyway, that's kind of where I am. So I'm starting a new tarot class. I'm going to do the 9 candles. If you subscribe to my channel, there's no way you will miss the fact that we're doing the 9 candles. You'll get a notice every day. Today is day da. The first day is always Dorothy Morgan. And Dorothy Morgan ties back to that original grid you saw. The day I fired that grid up, I wrote down on a piece of paper when I finished firing it up. It was 2-something in the afternoon. And then I just waited to see if anything happened. Well, the first thing that happened was the next day I opened up my emails, and there was one from an astrologer that I'd seen some of her work, and I really liked what she did because she's a very practical person. And I said, I'd written to her and said, I really like the way you presented this. And it ends up, she goes through, well, she used to in those days, go through every month and pull out all the new emails and then pull one and give them a free reading. So that was my first abundance off that, was that I met Dorothy Morgan. She did a progressed reading for me, astrologically. Right after I finished, and I asked Dorothy at the time, I said, when she and I met, I said, do you know when you pulled that slip of paper out of your hat? She pulled it a half an hour after I'd fired the grid up. I had a friend of mine that was on my list of people that I wanted, great new wonderful things to happen to them. She called me the next day, and she said, later in the afternoon, she said, are you still doing that grid thing? And I said, yeah, I already did it. I did it yesterday. I fired it up. Why? And she said she'd been looking for work for 3 months and had gotten. That afternoon, she got a call. One wanted her to start the next day, and the next one wanted her to start in a week. And she's a paralegal. So it's not like it's just, any old kind of job. So she said, I think it worked. And then the other ones started coming through, and, and we just kind of watched it happen. So, and it didn't happen for my daughter, though. She was on there, and it didn't happen for her. And she said, I think this is like, you can't read me. I don't think you can be on a grid with me. So she and I sat down, and I made her own grid. And she suffered from certain levels of anxiety. And so I made her this gorgeous grid with Amazonite and a bunch of other stones. And 2 days after she set it up in her bedroom and fired it up, she got a job offer she'd been chasing for 6 months at the university. So they work, but and it may sneak up on you. It's like that lady who kept saying, I don't think it's working. I don't think it's working. You have to pay attention to what you said.
Yeah. Well, the timing could have been off for your daughter too. It could be a lot of factors, but that is just pure gold. Thank you for sharing that.
But and like I said, you can build yourself a simple grid for just this week and then get rid of it. I used to sell little grids that were, one was for love, one was for prosperity, and one was for luck. And when I worked in a store, I bundled up these little packages, and there were 3 little crystals, and you could carry them with you. And that's the other thing you can do. If you fire up a grid and you want to carry it with you, you can do that. That will work. So no questions from the audience? No one wants to know?
We're getting some thank yous. Would you talk briefly about your prosperity stones, your gold stones? Because not everybody's aware of that.
Oh, okay. Okay. Can I present any of the pictures that are?
I think so.
Okay.
If not, just let me know and I'll put them up there.
Do you have a picture of them?
There's a green-backed one and one with orange.
Oh no, there's I have to go to my. Let me go see if I can find. Oh, not share screen. Crap. Guys, this is. What can I say? When we do things from our computer, stuff's on my keyboard. Oh, I found out what was making the noise. Stuff was on my keyboard, which it shouldn't. I know better.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know.
But I was going to show a picture of it because it makes it a little better if I can do that, if I can find it.
Yeah, there's a question for you.
Okay, I'm getting the gold under. How do I clean my stones? Oh, okay. Yes, cleaning stones is a real thing. Don't just throw them in water. Everybody thinks, oh, clear water, what can it do to them? Well, if you're dealing with selenite is salt. It's very, very, very hard salt, but it's salt and it will dissolve. If you're what I do is I mist with my little mister spray because it's easiest for me. You can sage them, you can smoke them, you can just go over them. Just a sudden clap and it will release. You'll see readers tap on their decks when they're reading them. They're rearranging all the energy inside the cards. You can sing to them. You can bury them in dirt. I don't do that. I would put them out in the moonlight if I lived in a neighborhood where I would be sure they'd all be there when I came back. But I actually have too many stones to move around quickly. So misting for me, or tone, or this is one of my favorite things to do. Yeah. That kind of stuff. Any kind of tone. When you deal with them with intention, that's the best way to get them clear.
Yeah. What about, you could send them Reiki, couldn't you?
You could. What I don't know about Reiki would fill volumes. So
yeah, I don't either, but I know a lot of people do in our community.
I know. And I've talked to them about what they do, and I think it's fascinating. I get healed every day by one person, and he works at 6:00 at night. He's got a whole little list. And he says, I'm starting, I'm stopping. And my kids used to worry because about 6 p.m, I'd almost go to sleep. We finally realized that's when Jimmy was working on me. So now I have to put it in a little package and wait till I go to bed to use the Jimmy energy. And then I have a lady who works with a group of us. She's been trying plasmatic healing because of COVID. And she works with us every Tuesday. So yeah, I know you can send energy anywhere.
Well, you and I are going to have another conversation because I have another whole deep place I want to go with you about becoming, that we started to talk about once a long time ago. And it's a very deep well. We don't have time for that today. So remember, keep an eye. Nancy G is going to be back. Right now, I think I want to deliver to you the the prayer and the closing remarks, and then we'll do some more Q&A.
There is a picture of the gold in the list now.
Oh, thank you.
The gold's on those are my gold stones. And those are the ones, those are just river rocks. And I get an acrylic paint that's shiny gold and paint them. And there's 8 rocks in there, and you pile them up beside your door. And you kind of have to pile them up on whichever way you have a door that will open. Or you can pile them up just inside the door if you live in a place like an apartment building where you can't put them. And they remind prosperity. Here's a good doorstep. They're also great for starting conversation with the Amazon delivery people.
Yeah, I'll bet.
I've ended up giving crystals away to Amazon delivery people that I could feel they really need some grounding.
And you said 8 rocks? Because I thought it was 9. Maybe I got it wrong.
Maybe it's 9. I'm counting on what I'm seeing on the screen.
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, well, she's got a whole video that she just did recently about the gold rocks. So that would be a good one to go watch to get those details.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have a basket of them at my door from last year.
That's
when you
funny.
did this.
And, I have friends that go out and once a season cleans them, and makes sure they get clean. Mine get morning sun, so they kind of get sort of dirty and blistery. So I have to go out and polish them off. And of course, the leaf blower guys don't help.
Yeah, Rossi says 8 means abundance. We'll have to go watch that video to find out whether she said 8 or 9 and be sure we're all doing it right.
Well,
Debbra,
I know what
be here.
Whatever you put out there will work because your intention is there.
Yeah.
It's 9 red candles. It's 8 stones. It's 8. It's 8.
Okay.
And if you put 9 out, you just got some extra protection out there.
Yeah, why not? Right. But it's good to keep with the numerology and do the right number.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, so our guest today for the closing prayer is Shirley Temple.
Oh, cool.
Do you have affinity with Shirley Temple?
My mother wanted me to be Shirley Temple. Actually, I've met people who knew her when she was a child star. I used to run a film festival. And they said she was engaging and brilliant, and she knew when to get out. And she was ambassador to the UN for a while.
Yeah, I remember.
She's a very bright lady.
I've just noticed that whoever shows up as the guest has some kind of connection.
Yeah, my mother I had permanents for years because my hair, despite the one little whoopy curl here, my hair is stick straight, and my mother was going to have a curly-haired kid.
Yeah, that was a thing back then. So let me tell you what Shirley had to share today. So she came in singing Starlight, Star Bright, First Star I See Tonight. Mm-hmm. And then she showed up in her young visage.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, it is important for you to understand that not everything is as it seems. In my young life, the public saw a happy little girl, but they didn't see me or how my childhood was splintered.
Mm-hmm.
I was controlled, made to perform like a circus monkey, and I had to endure inappropriate touching and other unpleasant interactions with powerful men. You might think that because I brought in so much money during wartime, I would get special deference. Sadly, that's not true. The type of people who use children in this way have no regard. It's all about their desires, their egos, having what they believe is their right to have. They are like kings in their own eyes, and they act from that perspective of themselves, regardless of whom it hurts. That's a big part of why I went into diplomacy later in life. It was a way of reclaiming my power to live life on my terms. I received deference and respect as a diplomat that I never received as a child star, practically supporting the studio single-handedly. It may not be pleasant to look at that truth. Nevertheless, it is truth. When those young children speak up and let you know they are in harm's way, believe them the first time. Make sure they're safe and ask questions. They must be immediately removed from harm's way. That is the only sane choice. There were many magical moments in my young life, but they were overshadowed by being misused, betrayed by the adults who were supposed to protect me. And I want you to know there are many children in similar circumstances. Please watch out for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Watch for the signs of abuse. Take action.
Mm-hmm.
There are beautiful highlights from my childhood. I was privileged to work with so many of the greats, and she specifically showed me Bojangles. Those are memories I cherish. They almost make up for the dark times. Remember my story and understand if those powers that be would abuse someone with my high level of recognition and public approval, how much more readily would they abuse another child with a lower profile? It's happening every day and it needs to stop. That is a cause I carry near and dear to my heart. And I would be honored if you would help me in my mission to spread more awareness. It may just be that you need to set new limits for the age at which children are allowed to work, as I did. Raise that age so that children have a better chance at escaping abuses. Entertainment is an honorable profession, but like any other, it needs safeguards to protect the workers, even when those workers are minor children, especially when those workers are minor children. So when you're looking for causes to support, I would be honored if you added that one to the list. In case you're wondering, I had a full life. I had joy. I had my family, but nothing could ever erase the memories of the abuse, particularly because I was too young to understand why those I looked up to betrayed my trust. I have to say, when I look at the conflict in the world today and the conflict in my time, I'm grateful my time ended before this present devastating chaos began. There is great hope for your future. I call upon the lightworkers to more fully awaken and bring others with you. The world is ready for a mass awakening. That shifts the balance of power towards the light. And when that happens, take full advantage. That is when you make your move. You clear away the old, corrupt, and you replace it with love and light. Thank you for coming to my speech today. I appreciate you giving me an audience to listen to my words. Everyone needs to feel appreciated now and then. The same goes for you. Look for opportunities to honor and appreciate one another, support one another in more fully living your purpose. That is particularly important in these present times when so much chaos and uncertainty floods the airways and your senses. That mutual support can be your lifeline, making all the difference. Where you feel led, offer support. You have no idea how that might change someone's life, and it costs you so little. It was fun visiting you. Thanks for giving me the time to have my say. Go with love and light. Be a beacon to those who are searching for help to light the way. I'll see you real soon. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye, Shirley. Thank you for coming.
So that was a lovely surprise that she gave. And I think if we look, we can see where it ties into Metatron's earlier message, because they always do, which then, of course, ties into your presentation. There's always connections.
Well, and you can, you can just sit there. You can, if you deal with the stones have been here for a long, 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 long time. And in a way, the changes the world's going through now were foretold a long time ago. And the geologists knew. This is where scientists and where we live, they're not really two different spaces. In 2017, our part of the galaxy rolled out where we are. Our solar system rolled out into part of the galaxy where we were going to have heightened photonic energy. And photonic energy is the teeny tiny, they're smaller than atoms. That's the energy that actually goes right through the earth. I mean, when they hit us. But it used to take, I can remember watching a 60-minute show in the 60s or 70s about what it took to catch one photon going through. And they had to like go down to these deep caves and build these things and all sorts of science stuff I don't really understand. All I knew was it was a pain in the butt and a whole lot of stuff to get to it. Well, all of a sudden, scientists began to realize that the photonic energy that was hitting the earth was changing us massively. I mean, we were getting massive amounts. And the other part of photonic energy is it changes you on a cellular level. It can change you on a cellular level. So from 2017 on, they were looking to see how all this stuff changed. And the first thing that happened is the Schumann resonance, which always seemed to be very even, started doing skitsy things because that comes from the very core of the earth. And what the elementals have told me is there will come a time when, because of this photonic shower that we've been under, it's going to build up in the core of the earth, and the core of the earth is going to ring like a bell. Now, don't ask me what that's going to say, but that's why all the ley lines had to get reconnected, was because that's how Gaia holds that form of the energy in. Now, where geologists fit in this is that they knew every 13,000 years something happened, because it actually changed the crystalline structure of rocks. And they found, when they found it at the 13,000 year level, then they found it at the 26,000 year level. Then they found it at the 39,000 year level. And it just goes back. And they were like, but when it happened before, people weren't on the planet, or our parts of what we would become us were. And it really kind of, when I first heard about that, it was in 2020, and I was just really understanding the crystalline structure of stones. And I went, my God, if it's going to change stones, what's it going to do to us? And then I did a show on 3 years ago with Andrea, and we did a thing on changing frequencies. And one of the articles I found was a woman doctor who was a cancer specialist, and they were beginning to use some things, and they would go down to the most cellular level to see what's happening to cancer. And all of a sudden they started seeing changes they hadn't expected, but they were finding them where they hadn't expected to see them, and they couldn't figure out where they were coming from. You know, was their stuff so misguided? So she was talking to her husband about it, and it ends up he's an astrophysicist. And he said, when did you guys, how far back can you go back and look at these tissues? And they figured out that it was beginning to change us on a cellular level. So all this stuff's been happening to us since 2017. We just weren't aware.
Well, the angels have said they've been rewriting our DNA for a while. So maybe that's in conjunction.
Oh, that's one way they could do it.
Yeah. So did you see a question about CERN? Do you know anything about CERN?
Yeah, I know about CERN. It's fascinating. I know what they're trying to do there. As it happens, my second husband was a physicist, and he was into all that level of thinking. And, you know, we could have had CERN under Texas, but in the 70s, when it went through in the early 80s, our legislature killed it. We would have been this. Then they said, we don't want that scientific crap here because it might teach you something. But CERN is going to teach us about, well, it's going to break down quantum mechanics so we can really understand it. And that's what when my husband was dying in 2004, he kept saying, you know what you do? It's in quantum mechanics. If you could understand quantum, you'd understand why it is what. And I was like, you know, my eyes crossed and my head fell to one side. Anything that had to do with physics, I didn't really understand too well. But I've spent some time understanding it. Now when I can relate it to how I see the world and how I've seen the world and how I've seen the universe, I can understand how that all works, and that they will enlighten. And it's like the scientists and the spiritual are getting closer, ooching together more closely. And we'll get there. And we are in the middle of a huge change. And if you say, well, I'm just not going to change, well, how are you not going to change if the sun's spewing?
I think you froze for a
Stuff
second.
coming off the sun.
There you go. You froze a second.
Okay. We've had incredible bursts coming off the sun. And, the first time we got flat hit with a plasmatic burst from the sun, it was in the 1800s, and telegraph wires had just been put up. And the night it hit, the only thing in the whole world it could really affect was telegraph wires. It burnt out huge swaths of the telegraph wires in Europe. And telegraph operators who were actually in the office when the power surge came through, they were physically injured or burnt.
Mm-hmm.
The sun's putting that down on, and the only, it may have been doing it for a gazillion years, but it had no way to focus it like it could on the telegraph wires. And that's what my child that's totally immersed in the world of computers said, that'd be our worst nightmare. If one of those really hit as spot on as that one hit through our wall of little satellites that are flying around us, they'd be gone. And I know a little bit about that because I told you my husband was a physicist. He worked for TI. And the reason satellites couldn't do more in the early days was if they put a computer chip up into space, the solar winds would blow it away. It would just melt it. It would not work. He invented with another guy the epoxy that they could put on solar chips. It could put on chips so they could go withstand the solar winds. And because of that, we got cell phones. That's what he blamed it. But when he was dying, I said to him one time, I said, honey, if there's anything you could go back and do in your life and do it differently, what would it be? Now, this man had survived World War II as a child in London and had, been through all kinds of just things that he was a child of war, which you don't ever need to say more about a person than they were a child of war. And I thought he was going to say something about what he majored in university and stuff. And he said, I would never make that epoxy. And I said, you mean the one that means chips can go into space? And it was a completely new thing. No one thought they could find a way around that, by the way, before they did. And he said, yeah. And he said, if we hadn't found that, we wouldn't have cell phones. And I hate cell phones. He really hated cell phones. He had an innate, and he didn't even get to the smartphone phase. He had an innate understanding of how much that stripped our personal privacy away from each of us. So that's my thing about physics and CERN. And CERN's going to find stuff the same way. And there's some poor guy at CERN who's going to come up with the best new thought. And then he's going to say, it's changed the world so fundamentally from what I understood that I don't want to live here anymore. And that's where we are with AI and AGI, which is the AI expanded into physical form. And all I can say is it's here.
Yeah. Make the best of it.
And, and go out and find your tree. Go find your Hogarth. And learn to love and learn to hug them. And, the cell phone only rules you if you don't learn how to turn it off.
I have mine on Do Not Disturb most of the time, so I miss a lot.
Mm-hmm. So does that, I don't even know if that begins to answer where we started from.
Oh, yeah, it's perfect. It all connects because the world is evolving and we get to decide what we want to do about that. Do we flow with it? Do we change it? Do we resist it? Of course, we know resistance is not a good idea. We know flow is a good idea. So how do we flow with it in a way that we can live with the consequences?
Well, we don't abandon our sense of spirit.
And our
if we abandon our sense of spirit and say, it's all ugly and horrible and no, and learn to hate because of it, then we're no different than what we were raised to be when we were younger. And they said, you can't believe all this hippie stuff.
Yeah. Well, at least in this community, we are working on love, peace, and oneness. So whatever it is, that's our approach. And we know that ultimately that will be the successful path to getting us to utopia. Yeah. Love is always the best answer.
It is.
Well, thank you for being here. It has been such a delight. And I look forward to our next conversation. Thank all of you for being here. We couldn't do it without you. And I just want to send lots of love out to everybody. Come back tomorrow because we have more juicy goodies for you. Anything else you'd like to say before we wrap, Nancy Jean?
No, just if you are interested in what I do, go join at Nancy Jean's Garden. Go subscribe. And I've all kinds of tips and tricks on how to dance through the world. And if you're interested in learning tarot, then you can please come join my class. It really is a good class. 6 weeks class with 3 weeks of follow-up where you get to just read with the other people you trained with. Classes are only 10 people in a class, and that means you really get a chance to learn. I won't make my classes bigger than 10 because I can't. Jeffrey and I just don't have the bandwidth to handle it.
Yeah.
And then join me for 9 Candles, April 24th through May 2nd.
And what's the date of the tarot class?
It starts on the 16th. The 16th is the one we do on numerology. So if you say, oh my God, that's next week, I need to rearrange my schedule, we can work it out. We had a lady who came in late and we taught her the numerology. You can learn it that quickly. It's not brain surgery. It's numerology.
Yes. You will love it. And that's April 16th, right?
Yes.
Next week. Perfect. So you got time to do that. Join in. And you've got some lovely thank yous showing up. Debbie's sharing your channel again. Perfect. All right. Well, I think I will let all you lovely people go back to your life, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Thank you so much, Nancy Jean. It was a blessing having you.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes. I really feel good. Bye-bye.
So, love to everybody today, tomorrow, and for always. Mwah. See you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Bye.